to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and this is on MTR Podcast. Today, I am interviewing the owner of Third Eye Comics, your local source for comics, records, games, toys, and much, much more. Please welcome Steve Anderson.
Hey, what's up? Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Totally. Eventually I'm going to get the boxer style intro in, almost like maybe MMA, like just jump out of my suit. It's time. Just losing my mind.
You got to do it like Road Dogg from the old WWF.
You get it. You get it.
Yeah. Y'all better call somebody.
Yeah. It's me. It's the ROB. So before let's get into it, actually. So describe your work and describe like that story around Third Eye Comics, because I want to learn a little bit more about this.
Yeah, sure. So we've been open since 2008. I grew up working at a comic book store in Bowie, Maryland, for I'd say probably I started there when I was 19. And then I worked there till I was about 23. I worked a few jobs that I wasn't too wild about when I was about 23. And one day I just, was like, hey, I'm going to try and give this a go. So I went back to working at the comic book store on weekends. I started delivering pizzas, selling my collection at conventions, things like that, and basically just saving every dime I could with the idea that, I might be able to get a loan to do this. Now, at the time in 2008, Iron Man had just come out, and that was it. You know what I mean? So like going to a bank and telling them that you need money to open a comic book store wasn't a viable thing. Like our industry hadn't turned into kind of what it's become, over the last 10 to 15 years. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know anything about any of that. So I just was like, I just could keep saving my money. And it actually worked out really well because I didn't have a whole lot of money saved up. But we knew a store owner in Annapolis who, that he was trying to get out of the business and he was looking to close. And we made a deal with him to kind of take on, basically his, bought his fixtures and, some goodwill, and basically, went in and, basically took over his old spot, and we renamed it Third Eye.
I dig it.
Yeah. And that's where we started. And that was 2008. And then we did that. We were there for a year and a half, 2 years. And then after that, it was on to a little bit of a bigger space right up the road, another 2 or 3 years there, and then on to another bigger space, a little bit up around the road. And then finally in 2017, we expanded into the location that most people know us from now, which is the one on Chickapen Round Road. And that's the one that has the comic store and the game store side by side. And that's a monster of a store, but kind of along the way, we've opened other locations and done a lot of cool stuff. I'm real thankful to be able to wake up and just do this thing that I'm pretty good at, and I really enjoy.
So what you were describing there is growth, and it's like comic, at least from my vantage point, comic is in name only. It's almost like you guys are comic, pop culture, the whole gamut. And it's like I've gotten into the convention circuit over the last few years, Anime Expo, Blurred Con, Awesome Con, the whole thing. Gone is press. So, I feel a little privileged. And so in that, what do you enjoy most about your work? Because I'm hearing the fandom there. Obviously has to be fandom. You can't say, oh, I really hate putting these pops up right now. But so tell me about what you enjoy most about your work.
Yeah, I mean, the mainstay for me, the thing that's always been a constant is I get excited finding things that make other people excited. Like that's the thing for me. So, I mean, and I think that's kind of part of our success is we're not there to just push, I like a lot of stuff, but we're not just there to push like the stuff we're into. It's more about basically just having something for everybody who's coming in, whether it's movies or toys or comics or games. And I love bringing in a new product category and kind of watching it grow and then seeing people get excited. Like, oh my God, I can find these in stores, or, oh my God, we just started carrying Blu-rays and DVDs about 3 months ago. Now that's most people that run, conventional big box retailers would be like, you're out of your mind. That's really dumb. People love them. They're stoked. They come in the store and they're looking at, they're picking it up and they're like, they're like, it's so cool to be able to go into a store and buy a movie again. And like,
Yeah.
that's the thing I like the most, is like being able to kind of give people an experience, that they're like, oh, this is me. I'm finding what I like, and that's it right there.
I mean, in my recording space, I'm recording this from the lovely Rob Lee Studios, my home. And I'm looking over my shoulder and I see my comic books. I like the much parsed down version of it in my DVDs. And, it's like you can digitize all of this stuff. I don't want to do that. I'm going to keep a small cachet. Like, I like to have that tangible thing. It just something doesn't seem right about, at least for me, storing everything online. And even to that, like, I want to say, one of my most prized possessions, I don't have it anymore, which shows you how protective I was of it, was probably a DVD of the old Silverhawks from back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. It was like this cartoon has no premise.
Right.
Other than their, nerves of silver.
I remember.
But, that's a thing for me. So for you, what would be that most prized piece of memorabilia, pop culture related for you? And how did you get it? Because I ordered mine from eBay. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Oh, man, that's crazy. I probably my CDs and my tapes. I grew up, when people talk about Third Eye, I'm like, comics and skateboarding and music and horror movies. And that was like my diet as a kid. And I remember there was a video rental store behind where I was living with my grandma at the time. When I was like probably about 9 years old. And we'd walk across the field to go to it. And they sold cassettes. And I've still got my cassettes from that era. So like in my CDs and stuff. And I think the first cassettes, it was when they sold like cassette singles. Yeah. So it was like, you got one song on each side. It was once you figured out what was happening, you're like, oh, this kind of sucks. Like,
you're getting over, guys.
Yeah. But it was Metallica, which I think it was Enter Sandman. And then I can't remember what the B-side was. And then there was it the Zim Zim Boys, the guys who did Rump Shaker? It was like, yeah. You know the song I'm talking about, right? Like
Rump Shaker.
Yeah. Like,
are you talking about 2 Live Crew?
No. I'm trying to think. Let me look it up real quick.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I remember like just stumbling across cassettes and things like that. Oh, Rex and Effects. Hell yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And I those were the first 2 cassettes I ever bought. And I still have them. I still got them.
That's dope.
Got them. And they're not going anywhere. Those are my most prized. Like, they've traveled everywhere with me because I'm a big music guy. And that was kind of like what got me into music to start. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So going back for you, because you touched on like Iron Man and, that whole process of like obtaining a loan and all of that, or looking into that. So for some people, that's their first comic book movie, right? Yeah. What is your first comic book movie? And I'll share mine's with you. But what's your first comic book movie? Mine's is gonna be. It's not good because I'm going to date myself real quick. It's probably Dolph Lundgren's Punisher.
Oh, I remember renting that. Yeah.
Where Lou Gossett Jr. is just miscast.
Yeah. And the knife, he had the skull knife. And that was the only hint of that being the Punisher that you saw. Like, yeah, that movie.
And he get his ass at the end of the movie. It's like, what is this? What are we getting here, guys?
Yeah, no, that was how superhero movies were like when we were kids. Cause like, I remember I rented that and I remember being super stoked. I was like, all right, cool. We're going to watch the Punisher. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking of like the Punisher, like War Journal Punisher. And it's like, and I don't even think he had black hair in it. He had like blonde hair, right?
He had dark hair. It was dyed dark. Yeah.
Dark hair. Okay. Yeah. But it was like, he didn't look anything like the Punisher, which is cool, whatever. Yeah. But then like friggin' like there's no skull on his shirt. And I was like, dude, give
me something.
Just the knife. That's all you saw. There was like one scene where he has like a knife and it's got the skull on it. And I'm like, that's it. Man, my first one was probably I got lucky. My first one was Batman, the Tim Burton one.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a great film. That's one of the rare exceptions of that time period that still really holds up. And I actually my mom had taken me to see that in theaters when it came out. It was 89, so I was probably like 7 or 8 years old at the time, and like and yeah, I mean, I was in, man. Like I had like the Joker, Chuck Taylors. I had the bat symbol on the side of my head.
Nice.
Like I was in. So that was my first one. But yeah, I mean, like that's it. I lucked out. I got a good one.
That's fantastic. Like, and I think they may have been the same year. I think both of those were maybe 89. And just showing you like, at one point, DC was ahead of Marvel, if we want to be honest about it. Because even at that point, like it had a bunch of like Superman movies. I didn't see any of those movies, like, and I still haven't any of the Christopher Reeves ones. Haven't seen any of those. So like Batman would be the most prominent for me up until probably Schwarzenegger came along. I was like, I think I'm all set. I think I'm all good. I think I'm good here. So comic books have gotten bigger and bigger over the last 15 to 20 years or what have you. Because I go back to probably like 98, like pre X-Men when like Blade came out. I just remember Blade being huge and like a lot of commercials on like HFS and things like that. And like, oh, wow, what's this? Or even them playing the rave, like kind of soundtrack. And I think that there are three groups out there in terms of like the comic bookoscope, as it were. You have fans, you have haters, and you have people who are just disinterested. What's a good example of a comic book movie, and what's an example of a bad one? Because I was playing a little bit of just a tip there, but what's an example of a good one, and what's an example of a bad one for the five folks out there?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned Blade, because like when people ask me like what do I think like the best comic book movie is or the most important comic book movie is, I say Blade, because I don't think we'd have any of the movies we've got now without Blade, because before Blade the movies weren't good. Like you had Tim Burton's Batman and that was it. Like the Captain America movie was bad. The Generation X movie for TV was bad. Fantastic Four is bad. Like there wasn't really any good superhero movies, and more importantly, there wasn't any movies that made comics feel cool. Yeah. And that Blade movie, when that came out, I remember everybody was like, this is really good. Like, and I was like, I gotta go see it. I was like 14 or 15 and I went to see it. It was bloody and badass, and it was like produced well. And like, that was cool. It made comics cool and it made comic movies cool. And like, without that, I don't think we would have gotten like the X-Men movie, which, you know, at the time, like that X-Men movie was really high level. Yeah. And then without that X-Men movie, we wouldn't have gotten Spider-Man. Without Spider-Man, we wouldn't have gotten Iron Man. So I would say Blade is probably my example of probably like the best comic book movie. I mean, it'd be easy to go to something like Dark Knight and say like, you know, like that's the best because that's so well put together. But like, I mean, when you think about what made everything come back and like kind of brought everything back to life and made it possible, I think it's Blade. My example of the worst one.
There's some good ones in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad ones.
Jonah Hex.
Yeah, that's a really bad one, and that's not even that old. That's the thing that, you know, like, I would probably say, and I don't want to pick on like, you know, like the like Fantastic Four by Roger Corman, but the Fantastic Four by Roger Corman is really bad. Yeah, that's a really bad one. So I would say like that 90s Fantastic Four one, like that's my pick.
Because you couldn't really find it anywhere either. It's like those who are in the know, they know that thing existed. And as much as people kind of like crapped on the Tim Story ones, like they're not particularly good either, but if you compare them to the Roger Corman ones, it's like, dude, oh, this is magic.
No. I mean, like, definitely.
But yeah, I think Blade is a good example, because the other thing that's not there, it's the beginning of like 3 movies of a trilogy. Whereas like The Dark Knight, you already had some, like, people love Batman. Let's just call that what it is. But also The Dark Knight's a sequel. It's a sequel to, you know, Batman Begins. So, you know, for Blade to come out with basically this pre-Matrix aesthetic.
Bingo. I was thinking that the whole time I was just talking about it. I was like, it also pretty much set up the Matrix in a way, you know, like, Yeah.
And I mean, who would have thought that Chris Christopherson would be so great in that movie?
Yeah, I know, dude.
I like that
Yeah.
movie a lot. I'll probably rewatch it because as we're
Yeah.
recording this, it's around it's spooky season, as it were.
Yeah, exactly.
And I watch a lot of horror movies. I may not look like it, but I watch a lot of horror movies.
Yeah.
And let's talk about horror movies a little bit because
Yeah,
you're a
sure.
movie
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. That's an area I love.
So, Malignant.
Oh, okay, right on.
Have you seen this?
I did. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. Like, I thought it was good. So I got a bad thing with movies where like I'll watch them and like, I go in and out. I got to see stuff in the theaters. I didn't see that in the theaters.
Yeah.
If I don't see it in the theaters, like I'm gonna fall asleep sometimes, unless it's really good. You know what I mean? But I liked it. I thought it was good. I thought the concept was cool. You know what the thing is? I liked the best about it. It felt like James Wan was making the movie that like teenage James Wan wanted to see. Like It felt like I stepped back in time and like my buddies and I were rolling to the theater in a crappy car that smells like Axe body spray in like 2001. And I mean this in the best way possible.
That's great.
But you know, like when the scenes would start, like the techno would start playing and I was like, this is like a really well done movie that like in the early 2000s would have been like a sci-fi movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's great. But I liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
We enjoyed it. I usually watch all of these horror movies with like my girlfriend, and she's like a 5'2" Bratz doll looking person. So you're like, also you really wouldn't expect to see her watching it.
Right.
So after we got to a point, we were like watching. I was like, this is just a bad movie. I was like, okay, now enjoy it a bit more because I know it's a bad movie. And when it gets to the reveal and all of that stuff, I was like, it's just an action movie right now. I was like, what's happening in this police station? Yeah. And she called me before it happened. She was like, she's going to hit them with his chair from a distance. And we laughed so freaking loud. So where do you consume most of your horror movies at? Like, are you a Shudder guy? Or are you just like, you got like a bunch of like DVDs? Where you get most of your horror movies?
So I've been collecting tapes and DVDs and stuff for a long time. And I'll stream stuff, like at the Third Eye offices, we actually have like in the conference room, we have like a big TV. And like, it's one of those like Roku, like smart TVs or whatever. And I'll keep like a bunch of like the streaming, like channels that do horror, like the free ones. I'll just keep this on rotate. Yeah. So like, there's always like something in the background, like you'll come in and like, Basket Case will be on or Reanimator or whatever. Yeah. But like DVDs, Blu-rays, and like, if it's something I'm real hyped for, like, I do like the Blumhouse movies, usually like stuff like Conjuring and all. So like when the new one of that came out, I was like, I can't wait for the theater. I got to watch this. You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, I'll do a mix. I'll do Shudder. You know what I mean? Like I'll do a mix, like it's one of those things where I go all over with it.
Yeah. We did a deep dive into Shudder, and like, it was one of those weird things where she signed up for it. And she was like, oh, I thought it was going to be for 1 month. She was like, oh, I signed up for a year. Oh, okay. And then she just re-signed up for it because we have so much fun watching it.
It's a great channel. Yeah.
We've dived into the Gallows stuff. We've dived into, what is it? The Creep Show series on it, which is really fire.
Yeah.
And I think even with HBO Max, you'll end up finding some of these gems that are like sitting there. So it was a movie as a kid. I remember the cover being so wild, and I've never watched it. So we were just sitting there one day, and I was like, is that freaking Shocker? I was like, let's watch Shocker.
I think it's got the guy in the electric chair on the cover. Yeah, that's classic.
That's freaking Skinner from the X-Files. And we've gotten so much humor out of that movie because it's like 93. And I'm like, I was 8 when this came out.
Yeah, I remember it in the video store.
We have so much fun. And it's just like, I haven't seen that in a while. It's just an extension of that fandom. Like, I was going through it. And I think that's ultimately what an extension of Third Eye is. Like we go through, we'll spend an hour in like a comic book shop. We'll spend an hour in a video game spot, and it's like just looking at the stuff. Hey man, look at that. That's really cool, man. Or just buying the stuff. And I think that's ultimately what you're capturing in your space.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, like we want people to walk in and just have this feeling that they're like, going into the coolest thing in the world. Like, like it's when you're a kid, and you go into like whatever you're into, a toy store or skateboards or whatever, and you go in for the first time, like you're a little nervous because you've never been in, and you're like, and then you get in and like, it's so cool when it lives up to the hype. You know what I mean? Like I mean, when I travel, when I'm going anywhere, that's what I look for. Is I look for other comic book stores, toy stores, and things like that. And I just like to go on all types because I love to just kind of like, it's just everything's so different and it's great.
That's one of the things. Like when I had the interview yesterday with at the time of this recording with Andy, one of the places, no, it was actually Mark. One of the places that he's a music guy, and he was like, the first thing that I do when I go to a new city is I check out the record store.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't know what the equivalent of a podcast is, but I like clothing. So I'll like, let me go here. I'm sure they have a sale on Carhartt or something. And I'll go there. But whatever your thing is, whatever your interest is, it's good to have a broad palette of it.
And it feels so good when you find a good one, Yeah.
So speak on some of the other challenges or difficulties of someone who wants to get or potentially wants to get into the comics industry. You mentioned earlier about like funding in that period when you guys got started was a hassle, So how is it now for someone who wants to either get in it from a selling kind of like in business kind of perspective, or someone who wants to get in it from the artistic standpoint?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So from like a dealer perspective, like selling at conventions, opening a store, anything like that, opening a store is still incredibly hard because it takes a good chunk of change to do it. Like the way that we did it, there was definitely a level of luck, because we got in there and like, I mean, we were, I was a kid, I was 26, you know what I mean? So it was weird, but like at the same time, like it's a little tricky because, you're navigating things like leases and like inventory and just, it's a lot of that. And, the industry as a whole, has been disrupted a lot in the last, 2 years, after COVID, where like things are, a lot harder, in terms of like, how we're ordering product, where we're getting product, things of that nature. So that end of it's still kind of tricky. But being able to sell comic books or toys or anything like that to other collectors has become way easier than it was, say, 10 or 15 years ago. Like it was, I sold online, before we opened, 15 years ago, and it was a process. It was very, very time consuming. It was very niche still. The market hadn't opened up like this, but now, I mean, you can go on like all these live selling apps, and you can just sell online, and it's crazy. And people build small like micro businesses that are very viable, that are just living in that space. And I think that's really cool. Like I watch those kinds of guys a lot that are doing that, because there's some really innovative stuff that they're doing to build their community and build their audience, and kind of get people at the end of the day excited about books and excited about comics and excited about toys and all the things I love. So yeah, I mean, so I guess it's not a great answer, but it's easier in some ways, harder in other ways.
And I think with it, because immediately when you were talking about like selling online, I immediately thought of Andy from 40-Year-Old Virgin, and I started laughing to myself.
Yep.
I think part of that is a reflection of just more things just being online now than they were 10, 15 years ago. And, you can go to even like really, really expensive sites like StockX and you see like, oh yeah, they did this Murakami like print on a pop. Oh, that's going for $8,000. Say word, like that's the thing.
Exactly.
People can fund things with it. Like I remember one of the things instilled in me from my dad when we were younger, my brother and I, of, oh, this is the number one issue. Put it in something, hide it, put it away.
Yeah.
And like eventually, you've read it, you've enjoyed it and all of that. But if it can fund something, if you can get like a couple of thousand off of it, and if it can fund something,
you
might be able to buy it later. You might be able to rebuy it later.
Exactly. No, I totally get that. Yeah. And then for the creative side, like comic book, writing and artists and stuff like that, I think that's probably actually a lot. I don't want to say easier, because there's a lot more people doing it. It's a lot like, I feel like music it got to be where basically like the internet opened it up so that everybody could do it, and everybody could get their stuff out there. So content is plentiful. But I think if you're good and you've got good skill, like I think it's going to get picked up and it's going to get noticed. So, but it is a lot easier to get out there and connect with people and like kind of just find an audience for your work. And I mean, like at the end of the day, like that's great because that's what you want is you want a breadth of variety in the content that's coming out instead of just the same like content. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, for a long time, you have just comics are for these people. Exactly. And they're written by these people. And then, when we look back at it, you're like, that wasn't great. That wasn't great. That was some interesting storytelling there. And
absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, if you look at like, like just like kind of like the industry now, like things have gotten so much more vibrant because you have people bringing in influences from all sorts of mediums, and like, it's cool. You know what I mean? And like and it's gotten a lot easier to get out there and find an audience that may not have been there a while ago. So like, for example, so the Avatar, the Airbender stuff, that is a fandom that is hardcore. You know what I mean? It is. Hardcore. And that probably has influenced more modern comics, that world and that lore than a lot of superhero comics. And because if you look at a lot of that stuff coming out of like Image and creator owned works like that, like the structure reminds you a lot of Avatar, and the just kind of the fact that there's not like one set genre, you know what I mean? And then you can trace that back almost to like, manga in a way because of like Shonen Jump and like things like One Piece and stuff. You know what I mean? Like you can't really say like, okay, what is One Piece? Is it a horror manga? Is it a superhero manga? It's its own thing. And that's what you want. You want lots of cool stuff.
Absolutely. About what percentage or how often are you working with like local like artists and such and bringing in these like local books?
We bring in a lot. I mean, like basically, if we think we can find an audience, we think we can sell it, and it's quality. We're going to bring it in. You know what I mean? And like when I say quality, I mean just the production value and things like that, because there's so many things that you have to think about when you put it on the shelf in terms of like, cause like my goal is for it to go on the shelf and then to go off the shelf. Yes. And like, I can't, cause every inch of shelf space costs money. You know what I mean? If the book is gorgeous and the story is incredible, none of that's going to matter if the consumer picks it up and maybe the printing is like, not the highest quality and the artwork looks a little muddy from like that, or maybe like the paper stock is like, a cheaper quality and it's like kind of ballooned out. You know what I mean? Like, like it's like that kind of thing. Like, but like, other than that, I mean, like we'll bring in anything and everything. And that's actually one of the things that like we've been known for a long time. It's why we have a lot of, people always ask me like, how do you get so many great signings with these, comic creators who are, really, really big? And I'm like, it's because I was bringing them in before they were really, really big, and people remember that stuff.
That's important. I think it's really, really big. I talk to everyone on here. So people are like, oh, hey, Rob, come through. I'm like, sure. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, exactly.
So what other talents, what other talent would you most like to have?
Oh man, that's a good one. I know that right away. The ability to not be distracted, to just focus, like just laser focus, like just be able to be like, cool, this is the thing that I'm doing right now.
Locked in.
Boom. And that's it. Like, that's it. Like, and I know that's a weird thing to say, but I'm telling you, like, that is the number one superpower. If you can do that, if you can just focus on something undividedly, you can pretty much achieve it. You know what I mean? But it's so hard to just do that, I mean, working from home over the last year and change has been a challenge. I'm like, my game is downstairs. I can just go play Madden for a couple of hours and then log in and check an email. Yeah. Or you get like a text message from somebody and then you're like, well, let me respond to that real quick. Or you check your email and then, or just like little things, and like, I'm like, That's it. I've thought about that a lot.
we have to be a little bit more like Robert Patrick from Terminator 2 and just be like a Buick, like an eagle, just straight to it.
Exactly. I'm going to watch that movie this weekend just for that. For motivation.
I'm going to send you our review so you can listen to it at the same time. So you can just get the whole immersive. Let's see. So we got rapid fire coming up next after this question.
Cool.
Which comic character? I know there's a lot, and this is a tough question. Which character do you relate to most and why?
That's a good one.
For me, it used to be Marv from Sin City.
Yeah. The why? I don't know, man. There's a lot. I mean, that's a beautiful thing about comics. You can find so much, of yourself in different ones. But I mean, there's times where sometimes I feel like Tony Stark because I'm balls to the wall, getting shit done. And then kind of messing stuff up, you know what I mean? And then there's times, I'd say the character when people ask me cool, Steve, what's your spirit animal? I mean, I like Ben Graham. I like the Thing, that's my guy. There's a lot. The Thing is very relatable to me.
So I guess it's clobbering time. It's time for some rapid fire then.
Yeah, cool.
All right. What are you currently reading?
Right now, comic wise or just in general?
In general.
In general? Okay, cool. So the thing that I'm reading right now is there's a book called Call of Them All. It's like a work related, like a store like retail thing. The guy's name is Paco Underhill. He did a really great book called Why We Buy, and he does all these books about retail, and people bring him out. This is not rapid fire. I'm so sorry. Call Them All. Yeah, but he's great.
You made a reference earlier to the Road Dogg. So now I changed out a question and put this one in there.
Okay, cool.
Favorite wrestler?
Oh man, that's a good one. Taz. ECW Taz.
Nice. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Favorite comic writer?
Grant Morrison.
Good choice. This might be a double play right here a little bit. Superpower you wish you had in real life? You may have already answered it.
Yeah, the ability to not be distracted. Just being focused.
I'll keep that in there. There are pills for that, I've heard. What is it? What's that Bradley Cooper movie?
I'm sorry. You broke up there. I apologize.
No, you're good. I was like, it's pills for that, like Limitless. So the last question I have for you, Kenner or Hasbro?
Kenner.
Okay. I respect that.
Kenner. Yeah. Just, I'm sorry, but the Batman figures, the Star Wars figures.
I respect it. So that's all the questions that I have for you today, Steve. So if you will, I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to shamelessly plug. So plug away. Telephone folks where to check out you, Third Eye Comics, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find us. You can find us and all of our various things like social media and all that at thirdeyecomics.com. If you do want to follow us, Instagram is where we live the most these days. It's Instagram.com/thirdeyecomics. And then in November of this year, November 13th, we'll be opening up a special new concept right around the corner from our Annapolis store called Third Eye Buys. It's going to be a storefront dedicated to just buying your nerdy stuff. And that's our next thing. So, yeah.
So sounds good. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. So I'm going to do my sign off. Cool. So for Steve Anderson of Third Eye Comics, I am Rob Lee saying that there is art, things to buy, geeky things to buy. Enjoy your fandom. Things to buy in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for them.